Guys, welcome back to another Mansell on Air video. Today we're talking about go-arounds, particularly how they pertain to the Boeing aircraft and how we conduct a go-around. There may be a time in the simulator that you might need to conduct a go-around, or otherwise known as a missed approach. And unless you're confident and you know exactly what you're going to be doing and how to do it, it may come as a startle effect. So it's better to be forewarned and forebriefed about how exactly you're going to conduct this procedure. Because it shouldn't be a rush necessarily. It doesn't need to be an emergency escape. It's not like a TCAS maneuver or a terrain escape maneuver. It is simply a standard procedure. It's not something that needs to be rushed. It just needs to be done in good time and in an orderly, constructive manner. So I'm going to go through several go-arounds today. The first one we'll name the normal go-around, and we're going to do this from minimum. We're going to do it from 548 feet. So here we are lined up for the approach for a runway 22 coming into Stansted, and that's where we're going to be conducting our approaches today. I'm just going to start putting some flaps out for our approach here. And what I want you to notice on this missed approach is exactly the different modes that we're expecting, and how the aeroplane reacts, and exactly how we would then clean up the aircraft in the event of a missed approach. So let's continue cleaning, continue lowering the flaps for the approach here as we approach the glide slope. We'll just make sure where we are on the checklist, because there we go. We'll just override that one because I've already done a missed approach earlier. Right, there's the descent checklist is complete, approach checklist complete, we're glide slope captured, and we're now on the landing checklist. The speed brakes are armed, and we can put gear down, flaps 20, start reducing the speed back to 160. Don't need max auto brake. Auto brake 3 should be more than enough. 3000 is the missed approach for this missed approach, so we'll leave that where it is. Now, first things first, on any missed approach in the simulator, you need to know where your toga button is. Now, hopefully you'll have this programmed on somewhere on either your keyboard or your yoke or your throttle quadrant, ideally the throttle quadrant, that's within reach. But if you don't, on the PMDG aircraft, if you hit this screw, it's the same as pushing toga. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. And now I'm going to go for flaps 30. So our landing flap. So approach speed 150. And just waiting for the landing checklist to complete. So when we hit toga, what we're going to get is thrust, toga, and toga in the FMAs. And we should also get, if you have, if you're in sync with your waypoints in the FMS, you should also get LNAV as armed. And if you're above 200 feet with the autopilot engaged, the LNAV will then capture. So it will then say thrust LNAV toga. So we've got land 3 roll-out flare armed. Landing checklist is complete. Checklist complete. So again, we're going down to 548 feet. This is just a normal missed approach. And so we're going to hit toga. What we're going to wait for it to go is go around, set thrust, flaps 20, thrust set. We check that our FMAs, we look for a positive climb, gear up, and we raise the gear. So it doesn't need to be very fast in this call-outs. We just need to make sure we cover all those points. So we're going down to 548 feet, through 1,000 feet missed approach altitude set. We are stable, continuing for now. Now this would be as if you get to minima and you're not visual, okay? I also want you to look carefully at where the thrust setting goes to. It's not going to go all the way to the top because it's going to aim to get to 3,000 in roughly 2 minutes or so. So it will give you a reduced, derated thrust setting when we hit the toga button. So here we go.
400. Approaching minimums.
Check.
minimums.
Go around, set thrust, flaps 20. So we bring the flaps to 20, thrust set, thrust LNAV toga, positive climb, gear up. None of that needed to be in quick time. We're now sorted. Now, depending on which procedures you're using, which airline, you may leave it in this all the way up to 3,000 feet. Alternatively, at 1,000 feet above ground level, some operators will then go into VNAV to start cleaning up the aeroplane. But if you do that, the thrust will increase to accelerate. Something else I want to show you while we're here is if you were to push toga again, the thrust will increase to thrust ref and give you full climb performance. There's thrust ref, and now the thrust is going to increase to full climb performance. And already we've captured the 3,000 feet. Now as soon as we capture that 3,000 feet, we can now accelerate and start claiming up the flaps. Now because we're in LNAV, the aeroplane is going to follow the missed approach procedure, which takes us off round towards Barkway. And that should keep us all nice and safe. So that's a normal missed approach. So next one, we'll have a look at another missed approach from a little bit further out, and then we'll do close in, and I'll show you the differences there. So welcome back, guys. This is part 2, where we are going to conduct the missed approach from above the missed approach altitude. So in this scenario, we're about to intercept the ILS at 5,000 feet, and at some point, ATC might tell us to conduct a go-around. We might actually be above the missed approach altitude, which in this case is 3,000 feet. So how do we do that? Well, it's a good question, because there may be more than one way to do it. On the 777, it will allow you to disengage the approach mode above 1,500 feet, but on other Boeing types, this is not possible. For example, the 747 and 737. So in those scenarios, what you might need to do is either deselect the ILS frequency or disconnect the autopilot and basically cycle through the flight directors and cycle them back on. So that's what I'm going to show you today, is that technique. So let's say now ATC say Manson Air 1, go around runway 22. So we're back, go around runway 22, Manson Air 1, and crucially at this point there is absolutely no rush. We know we've been told to go around, but we're nowhere near the runway, right? And you have all the time in the world to conduct this procedure. So what I would do is brief the guy next to you, or obviously you're flying with yourself, is sort of say, okay, how am I going to do this? I need to get down to 3,000 feet to conduct this missed approach. Do I go below 3,000 feet and then hit toga? Do I try and level off from above? Have we got time? What's the best way to do this? So today, what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the autopilot, cycle the flight directors, and then rebuild the automation. So we're going to do that now. Here comes the autopilot, flight director. So we're going to go flight directors off, which will drop these two modes, localizer and glide slope. Flight directors back on. We can now go ahead and re-engage the autopilot. And we're now on vertical speed, maintaining 800 feet per minute, and we're in track hold. So all we need to do is hit LNAV to maintain the track for the missed approach procedure, and vertical speed will gently, if we want it to, at 500 feet per minute, take us down to the missed approach altitude of 3,000 feet. And in that fashion, let's get rid of this traffic that's coming into bump into us. In that fashion, we should be able to conduct a missed approach from above the missed approach altitude. So we'll see it now. It should capture at 3,000 feet. Now, how do we clean up from here? Well, we see what state the aircraft is in first. We've got the gear down, we've got the flaps at 20. So we don't need to retract the flaps to 20 because they're already in the 20 position. So the next procedure would have been positive climb, gear up. We don't need a positive climb because we're leveling off at 3,000 feet. So we can go essentially gear up. There's Alt as we capture the 3,000 feet. And again, none of this needs to be rushed. we could just do it methodically. So, waiting for the gear to come up, and then we can slowly increase our speed if we want to. Gear is up. So now we can go up to our flaps 5 speed, for example. It doesn't need to be a rush to fair at all. Speed check, flaps 5. To the flaps 1 speed. Speed check, flaps 1. And up to the flaps up speed. Speed check, flaps up. So let's maintain that speed for now. Now we can breathe. We can say, okay, we've cleaned up the aeroplane, gear is up, the flaps are up. What do we do next? We need to do the after takeoff checklist. So we present the after takeoff checklist. After takeoff checklist is complete. Now, what you need to remember, which I missed on the last segment, was after each of these missed approaches, obviously if you're going to conduct another approach, you have to go through the descent and approach and landing checklist again. So remember, after a go-around or a missed approach, you have to do the after takeoff checklist, and then it's as if you've started your descent again. So then it's descent, approach, and landing checklist once again. So don't forget the checklists. Close that away for now. And we can conduct our missed approach just as we would have done anyway. So that's how we do it from above the missed approach altitude. Another way could be, if you can disengage the approach mode, you can disengage it, you could go into vertical speed, and that should drop you back into, again, track or heading select and vertical speed, and then you can go and capture that 3,000 feet. But as I say, the 777 will do that above 1,500 feet. The other Boeing types may not. So just keep in mind the alternate backup procedure. Disconnect the autopilot, flight directors off, flight directors back on again, re-engage the autopilot, and build that automation with the modes that you want, in this case vertical speed and LNAV. Let's go on to the next scenario. Alright, so for this final demonstration, we're going to hit toga at a very low level. I'm going to try and purposely touch the aeroplane on the ground. So I'm manually flying the aeroplane now. As you can see, it's all over the place. But we'll get it on the ground. We'll hit toga just before we touch down. What I need to remember with this is to manually push up the thrust, because as soon as those wheels touch the ground, the aeroplane, the auto throttle will be disengaged. So we need to keep that in mind. Getting a little bit high here. There we go, back onto profile. Right, let's chasing this all over the place now. Right, I've got the toga button ready to go. So I'll probably hit it just before touchdown, just as I'm in the landing attitude. Touching down, and it just bounced off the ground there. See? Not the end of the world. So we have go around set thrust, flaps 20. Thrust set. Thrust LNAV toga. Positive climb. Gear up. And we get the autopilot in. And again, doesn't need to be dramatic. It's just methodical. That's all it is. And the airplane's on its way. That's pretty much it. Now I'll just show you this cleanup procedure. If at 1,000 feet you want to start accelerating, all you need to do is push the VNAV. So we'll get to 1,000 feet on the radalt. Push VNAV. You'll see we go into thrust ref. Thrust increases, and our speed bug goes right up to 220 knots. Let's increase our climb to 3,000 feet if we can. And start cleaning up. Flaps 5. Flaps 1. And flaps up. so it doesn't run away with us. Just go to vertical speed. Reduce the speed just a little bit to 230. And once we're happy the airplane's all settled down, we're cleaned up, we can go ahead and do our after takeoff checklist. For some reason it's gone to the shutdown checklist now, I'm not quite sure what that will be. After takeoff checklist is complete. There we go. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is go-arounds in the Boeing aircraft. Hope it's helpful, and remember, if you're expecting a missed approach, brief not only the missed approach procedure on the plate, but actually your actions. What are you actually going to do? What are you going to press? What is your methodology, how you're going to actually conduct this missed approach? That's really important. And when you actually do it, before you hit tow, just think for a second. Okay, think before you push the button, what am I going to push? What's going to come next? What am I expecting to see? What am I expecting the airplane to do? There's no rush in any of this. None of these procedures that I've shown you today have been rushed. They've just been methodically worked through. And that's what we're looking for, really. It's not an emergency procedure. We're not pulling up aggressively from the ground. We're not trying to get away from something quickly. And we're not reacting immediately to ATC's command. We're responsive, but we're methodical. And that's the aim of the game. Thanks for watching.